Kirby's Epic Yarn was one of my favorite games growing up, and I still do have a bit of a soft spot for it. It was one of my first introductions to just how much an art style can really change a game. When people talk about cozy games, this is what my mind envisions. The vibes are just off the charts. But, as Kirby often does, he moved on. But that did not stop developer Goodfeel from making a spiritual successor using another Nintendo IP. Yoshi's Woolly World came out 6 years later for everyone's favorite, the Wii U. If you think about it, Yoshi is the perfect character to take up that epic yarn mantle. Like, Yarn Kirby already has this suspiciously Yoshi tongue-like whip attack, a ground pound, can't puff up and fly anymore but rather as a float. Transformations have always been a Yoshi thing. I mean, even this ending roulette wheel feels a little reminiscent of Yoshi levels. This seemed like the perfect fit, but there is just one problem. I don't really like this game. That's odd, right? I mean, Epic Yarn is like one of my top 10 games of all time, and I couldn't even bring myself to finish this game when I played it at launch. I don't even know if I got past World 1. Today, I'm going to be revisiting Woolly World with one question in mind. How can I love Epic Yarn, but not even be able to bring myself to finish its successor? Anyways, like the video, subscribe, here's the graph, you know the drill. Epic Yarn was part of that weird era of Kirby. Like, we had this, Air Ride, Canvas Curse, Mass Attack. Kirby was just on that weird shit for a while. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about this game. It's just how not Kirby it is. First and foremost, this is a yarn game. The developers took Kirby, stripped him of almost all of his iconic abilities, flying, absorbing, copying, hissing, and plopped him into this charming world of yarn. Yes, elements of the Kirby series are present, but you can also tell that this game had its own original vision beyond just another entry in the Kirby series. This is because this game wasn't even originally a Kirby game. It started development as a Prince Fluff game. You know, the little blue Kirby in this game. It wasn't until later into the project that Nintendo had offered the Kirby IP as a way to maintain widespread interest in the title. I think this original vision, separate from Kirby, is one of the things that makes this game feel so fresh, which can even be kind of proven in a way by many of the reviews noting that the addition of copy abilities into the remake Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn kind of ruins the game in a lot of ways. Yoshi's Woolly World, on the other hand, was never meant to be anything other than a Yoshi game. Maybe it seems a little strange to dwell on the fact that a Yoshi game is trying to be a Yoshi game, but yeah, that's what I'm gonna say, and you're gonna have to live with that. I already published this video, I can't change it now. Let me get this out of the way. I'm not a huge Yoshi fan. I've tried a lot of them. Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's Story, Yoshi's New Island, and, of course, Yoshi's Woolly World. But I always just get bored of them before I even finish. It's probably something to do with the slower pacing, the fact that I find the system of aiming to be a little tedious, all the collectibles, whatever. My point here is that I don't think the fact that I dislike Yoshi games should really matter here, because it is entirely plausible for someone to hate Kirby games and still love Epic Yarn. The charming art style and completely unique gameplay makes it a game that anyone could pick up and get enamored with. Losing sight of this original vision of what Epic Yarn originally was supposed to be is one of the main things that makes this game feel disappointing to me. You can make a game with the same art style and still completely miss the point. I think nowhere is this more apparent than in the presentation. Like, right off rip, I just want to show you what unlocking a new level on the world map looks like in both games. I mean, before you even get to play the game, you lose so much personality and charm. Going from waking up a bear with an alarm clock to have it open the path to just the most generic draw a line to the next level is already super indicative of what we've lost here. We no longer have these cute backdrops to show what each level is about. We get the most simplified, sanitized little thumbnails that oftentimes don't really even tell us anything about the level we're about to play. Furthermore, on the topic of presentation, while these games both share this yarn, wool, crafts aesthetic, there's a very big difference between how they utilize that style. In Yoshi's Woolly World, the world is made of wool. But what world are we making out of wool? A lot of the levels look the same because the ground, walls, platforms, ceilings are all made of the same material. There isn't a world that we're trying to create here. The world is a backdrop, something to be used for platforming. Oftentimes, it feels like the developers came up with a platforming mechanic and needed to find a way to associate it with the art style. Rarely does it feel like the art style inspired the platforming. These levels are obstacle courses, not places. In Kirby's Epic Yarn, we have more of a stitched-on felt vibe going on. The levels are often thematically really strong, and platforming elements feel built around the thematic ideas of the levels, like grappling onto a drifting piece of dandelion in flower fields, riding on a dinosaur's head through river rapids, all the musical instruments that react to your character in Melody Town. Every level is designed from the ground up to the point where almost all of them are completely visually distinct. Yes, some assets may be reused here and there, but there's visually a lot more going on than just recoloring green wool we used for grass to be yellow for sand. The final note about presentation I want to bring up here is the soundtrack. I think both games have some good music, but I think Kirby's Epic Yarn does a better job for a few reasons. The first is simply that the levels are more memorable. With a more visually distinct location to attach these songs, they can take me places. Every time I hear the beginning of Splash Beach, I can vividly remember that moment where you rip the moon out of the sky to turn the level to day. I also think the soundtrack feels a little more unified here. There's a lot of piano, which I think for a game with a more crafty visual appearance helps evoke feelings of childhood. It feels right here. In Yoshi's Woolly World, the music is kind of all over the place, which in itself can be a good thing, but I think it also lends to making the levels feel even more disconnected and generic. Like, let me play you a song, and tell me if you can ascribe to which level it belongs. That song was called Vamoose the Lava Sluice, and it goes towards this level. Things just feel discordant here sometimes. But hey, why don't I actually get into the gameplay here? That's why we play games, right? Both games are really solid and tight platforming experiences, but I need to say something. Yoshi's Woolly World makes me feel like a psychopath, and I just need to talk about this. I can't be the only one. Let's talk about collectibles. So in every level, there are 5 flowers, 5 bundles of wool, 20 stamp patches, and you need to collect at least 15 hearts because your health is also a collectible for some reason. This is already a lot of things to collect in one level, but it gets worse. Because there are a minimum of 33 things you need to find in each level, there really isn't a lot of space to hide all of that stuff. So what do? They made half of them invisible. And no, I don't mean collectibles that are cleverly hidden off screen. I mean collectibles that you cannot see until you blindly jump into them to reveal them, or where you literally have to walk through solid walls to find them. Yes, I know a lot of 2D platformers do this, but usually it's supposed to be like a cave that you can walk into, and because of the perspective, it doesn't look like a cave. In this game, you can see the side of the wall is solid. Why does it do that? Oh, also, these stamp patches, they're just inside of beads. Like, you have to check every single bead in case just one of them is one of the 20 stamp patches in any given level. Listen, I don't even care about 100%ing this game, but the absolute brainworm infestation this game has instilled in me to jump and scrape my face against every empty space and solid wall just to reward me for it half the time. I just feel like an insane person playing this game. I wouldn't wish an 100% playthrough of this game on my worst enemy. I usually like finding collectibles in platformers. This game just takes it too far, to the point where they just exhausted me. I usually go into platformers expecting to 100% them, or at least get all of the main collectibles, but in this game, I gave up on that prospect really quick. Alright, let's back it up a little bit. What about the levels themselves? I think this game has a lot of cute ideas. In fact, it feels like this game is so obsessed with shoving a new cute idea in your face every level that it often forgets to build on them. For example, there's this one level I really enjoyed where you ride these high-speed curtains. You have to climb up and down to collect items, you jump from curtain to curtain when one goes off the rails. It's genuinely a lot of fun. After this level, these curtains are never seen again. There are so many new mechanics being introduced constantly that the game doesn't have time to dwell on any of them for very long. Like these Velcro conveyor belts, super cute, make a lot of sense with the art style, have a lot of potential for platforming. One level, gone. I think this would be fine if all the ideas were good, but I think a lot of them are misses. Towards the end of the game especially, there is just an absolute slog of levels where the gimmick is that you're waiting on a very slow moving platform over an instant death pit. Snow lifts, river rafts, magic carpets, balloons, these silhouette platforms. It's annoying because this feels like a game I would have enjoyed more had it stuck with its best ideas instead of trying to cram out a new one constantly, even if it doesn't really work. The levels in Kirby's Epic Yarn similarly have new ideas constantly, but these ideas are often thematic. One level where you go through cozy cabins, another where you're climbing a beanstalk, platforming through a town made entirely of music. The platforming elements spring naturally from these ideas, and even if there are some levels that are a little more lackluster than the rest, the overall quality here feels much more consistent. Yoshi isn't devoid of these thematic levels. I really enjoyed levels like the Lair of the Smooch Spiders, but it's definitely not the norm. One thing that Kirby's Epic Yarn often gets a lot of criticism for is its difficulty. I've never fully understood this criticism because yes, the game could be harder, but also, do you know what game you're playing? Essentially, this game adopted a form of Sonic's ring system where you lose gems every time you get hit, or you fall in a pit, or whatever. But unlike the ring system, you don't die if you get hit without gems. Therefore, the only thing really stopping you from beating a level is your own lack of persistence or shame from having lost so many gems. Kirby has always been a series that has prioritized accessibility. These games always have options to let less experienced players experience the game. With that, they often try to allocate difficulty towards optional objectives, collect every collectible, post-game content. It's really no different here. While you can beat a level with no gems, you won't be able to get a gold medal unless you finish with a substantial amount of them. If you want more difficulty, there it is. You just have to pursue it. Yeah, maybe not being able to die in a level is a step too far, but I also think the main appeal of this game is its aesthetics. So I really don't know if having to redo large sections of these already long levels would do this game much good. Now, beyond just score, what do these gems do, I hear you asking? Well, this is where you get to ball out. These gems let you buy furniture and fabric to fill out your crib. That's that's kind of it. This feature is really cute, but not really groundbreaking or anything. It would be nice if there were more substantial collectibles to buy with your gems, but as we'll come to see, this issue is not exclusive to this game. Yoshi's Woolly World is definitely the more difficult of the two games, which is both good and bad. The platforming itself can definitely be a little more intricate, and you are actually able to die. I think when the game throws in a lot of precise platforming and egg throws, it can feel really satisfying, but I also think that a lot of the time, dying in this game does not feel great. If you die in this game, it's pretty much always going to be a one-shot kill. Falling into a pit, falling into lava, bore. This is because Yoshi is so hard to kill with normal obstacles. You can float infinitely, you have projectiles, and you have long-range melee. How does anyone get in on this dude, let alone for his 20 health points? They can't. Which is why when the levels want to get harder, they just put you on a very slow auto-scroller where you can't use all of your tools. As a consequence, dying on these sections is miserable, because you not only have to redo that really slow auto-scroller, but you also have to recollect every collectible, which again, is a lot of collectibles that are invisible. In this game, you can actually spend your beads on badges. Every time you enter a level, you can spend a certain amount of beads to equip one buff. These range from defense buffs to changing Yoshi's abilities to even helping reveal some of the many invisible collectibles. On paper, this system is fine, but I kind of wish it was a lot better. First of all, you can only equip one badge at a time, and secondly, you have to rebuy the badge every level. It's not like you're ever strapped for cash in this game, but it gets kind of annoying, especially when you found the one that you just want to use every time. You also unlock these badges as you progress through the game, and some of them are just way too late. Like, you unlock a badge that increases your speed 2/3 of the way into the game. While there is a badge to make invisible collectibles visible, I unlocked it more than halfway through the game, and even then found myself more often opting for the speed boost instead, because moving faster just makes this game feel so much more bearable. This system also feels awkward in the ways that when you first enter a level, you have no clue what kind of hazards it will present. Perhaps you enter a level with the speed boost only to realize you spend a majority of the level not moving. Well, you can change the badge in the pause menu, but you still have to pay for both. It would be nice if this system was more like a skill tree, where you could choose to upgrade parts of Yoshi that you want to improve. Like, a flat speed buff should just be a permanent thing, while other things like equipping watermelons could be the per level payments. By the end of the game, I still had roughly 90,000 beads and nothing else to spend them on. At least give Yoshi a crib or something, I don't know. I also want to talk about the transformations real quick. I really don't know what happened here. I don't really understand why these are so underdeveloped in Woolly World. In Epic Yarn, you had entire levels designed around these, or they were seamlessly integrated into the levels themselves. In Woolly World, these are little side rooms given 20-second timers. They just feel unimpressive and like a waste of time rather than a fun little diversion. Final gameplay thing I want to touch on here is boss fights. I don't think either game has particularly amazing boss fights, but I do think one does a much better job of presenting them. In Kirby's Epic Yarn, almost every boss boils down to wait for the weak point to show up, then attack. Coincidentally, in Yoshi's Woolly World, every boss boils down to wait for the weak point to show up and then attack. In Kirby's Epic Yarn, I can at least say that these bosses are unique. Like, let's take the World 1 boss for example. This is Fangora. They are a dragon. You spawn in on a stormy field. Strands of yarn wave up and down to show the wind whipping past you. Just the force of its wings send you tumbling to the back of the screen. The music is this energetic piano track. When Fangora shows its weak point, Kirby has to pull back and release in this satisfying snap. The presentation makes this fight feel more fun than it actually is. There's a magician, a giant squid, and some classic fights with a yarn twist. At the very least, the bosses themselves have interesting designs. So what happens when you take off all that dressing? Well, you get a Woolly World boss fight. In Yoshi's Woolly World, every single boss fight is a larger version of a normal enemy. As if that wasn't boring enough, you get the privilege of fighting Montgomery Mole, yes that's his full legal name, and a Paratroopa 3 times each. These fights are not spectacles. You walk into a boring boss arena, the boss will flounder around for a bit, then it's your cue to ground pound them. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. There are 12 of these. These fights are so uninspired and boring that I genuinely think the game would be better off without them. Why do we even need to have a midway fortress in every world if we're just gonna reuse Montgomery for the 3rd time to fill it? Why is this game that is so experimental and bold when it comes to its mechanics and level design so uninspired when it comes to bosses? At the end of the day, Yoshi's Woolly World bothers me because it's pretending to be something that it really isn't. As just another Yoshi game, it probably fills that expectation rather well, but as a spiritual successor to Kirby's Epic Yarn, it fails in almost every aspect. Have I been shitting on what is ultimately a pretty decent game for this entire video? Yes. But I'm only doing it out of passion. It feels like the developers just forgot about everything that made Epic Yarn a classic. It wasn't that we were playing a Kirby game, it was all the charm and identity it had to offer beyond that. Woolly World may very well be an incredibly tight and well-made Yoshi platformer, and if that's what you want, that's great. But I can't help but wonder how many people feel the same as I do here. How many people grew up with Epic Yarn, were excited to hear about a new Yarn game by the same developers, and just felt incredibly let down by it. There is so much heart and charm that is just missing from this game, to the point where it just ends up being a little forgettable. While Kirby's Epic Yarn is a game I could recommend to anyone, Yoshi's Woolly World is a game I would really only recommend to Yoshi fans, which I think is a bit of a shame.